Were it the only thing required of us to seek not our own, nature would not have the least power to comply. She so inclines us to love ourselves only, that she will not easily allow us carelessly to pass by ourselves and our own interests, that we may watch over the interests of others, nay, spontaneously to yield our own rights and resign it to another. But Scripture, to conduct us to this, reminds us that whatever we obtain from the Lord is granted on the condition of our employing it for the common good of the Church, and that, therefore, the legitimate use of all our gifts is a kind and liberal communication of them with others. There cannot be a surer rule, nor a stronger exhortation to the observance of it, than when we're taught that all the endowments which we possess are divine deposits, entrusted to us for the very purpose of being distributed for the good of our neighbour. But Scripture proceeds still farther when it likens these endowments to the different members of the body. 1 Corinthians 12:12. No member has its function for itself, or applies it for its own private use, but transfers it to its fellow members, nor does it derive any other advantage from it than that which it receives in common with the whole body. Thus, whatever the pious man can do, he is bound to do for his brethren, not consulting his own interest in any other way than by striving earnestly for the common edification of the Church. Let this, then, be our method of showing goodwill and kindness, considering that, in regard to everything which God has bestowed upon us, and by which we can aid our neighbour, we are his stewards, and are bound to give account of our stewardship. Moreover, that the only right mode of administration is that which is regulated by love. In this way, we shall not only unite the study of our neighbour's advantage with a regard to our own, but make the latter subordinate to the former. Unless we should have omitted to perceive that this is the law for duly administering every gift which we receive from God, he of old applied that law to the minutest expressions of his own kindness. He commanded the first fruits to be offered to him as an attestation by the people that it was impious to reap any advantage from goods not previously consecrated to him. Exodus 22:29 and 23:19. But if the gifts of God are not sanctified to us until we have with our own hand dedicated them to the giver, it must be a gross abuse that does not give signs of such dedication. It is in vain to contend that you cannot enrich the Lord by your offerings, though, as the psalmist says, "Thou art my Lord, my goodness extendeth not unto thee," yet you can extend it to the saints that are in the earth. Psalm 16:2 and 3. And therefore a comparison is drawn between sacred oblations and alms, as now corresponding to the offerings under the law. 6. Moreover, that we may not weary in well-doing, as would otherwise forthwith and infallibly be the case, we must add the other quality in the Apostle's enumeration: charity suffereth long and is kind, and is not easily provoked. 1 Corinthians 13:4. The Lord enjoins us to do good to all without exception, though the greater part, if estimated by their own merit, are most unworthy of it. But Scripture subjoins a most excellent reason when it tells us that we are not to look to what men in themselves deserve, but to attend to the image of God which exists in all, and to which we owe all honour and love. But in those who are of the household of faith, the same rule is to be more carefully observed, inasmuch as that image is renewed and restored in them by the Spirit of Christ. Therefore, whoever be the man that is presented to you as needing your assistance, you have no ground for declining to give it to him. Say he is a stranger. The Lord has given him a mark which ought to be familiar to you, for which reason he forbids you to despise your own flesh. Galatians 6:10. Say he is mean and of no consideration. The Lord points him out as one whom he has distinguished by the lustre of his own image. Isaiah 58:7. Say that you're bound to him by no ties of duty. The Lord has substituted him, as it were, into his own place, that in him you may recognize the many great obligations under which the Lord has laid you to himself. Say that he is unworthy of your least exertion on his account, but the image of God, by which he is recommended to you, is worthy of yourself and all your exertions. But if he not only merits no good, but has provoked you by injury and mischief, still this is no good reason why you should not embrace him in love and visit him with offices of love. He has deserved very differently from me, you will say. But what has the Lord deserved? Whatever injury he has done to you, when he enjoins you to forgive him, he certainly means that should be imputed to himself. In this way only we attain to what is not to say difficult, but altogether against nature, to love those that hate us, render good for evil, and blessing for cursing, remembering that we are not to reflect on the wickedness of men, but look to the image of God in them, an image which, covering and obliterating their faults, should, by its beauty and dignity, allure us to love and embrace them. 7. We shall thus succeed in mortifying ourselves if we fulfill all the duties of charity. Those duties, however, are not fulfilled by the mere discharge of them, though none be omitted unless it is done from a pure feeling of love. For it may happen that one may perform every one of these offices in so far as the external act is concerned, and be far from performing them aright. For you see some who would be thought very liberal, and yet accompany everything they give with insult, by the haughtiness of their looks or the violence of their words. And to such a calamitous condition have we come in this unhappy age, that the greater part of men never almost give alms without contumely. Such conduct ought not to have been tolerated even among the heathen. But from Christians, something more is required than to carry cheerfulness in their looks and give attractiveness to the discharge of their duties by courteous language. First, they should put themselves in the place of him who they see in need of their assistance, and pity his misfortune, as if they felt and bore it, so that a feeling of pity and humanity should incline them to assist him just as they would themselves. He who is thus minded will go and give assistance to his brethren, and not only not taint his acts with arrogance or upbraiding, but will neither look down upon the brother to whom he does a kindness, as one who needed his help, or keep him in subjection as under obligation to him, just as we do not insult a diseased member when the rest of the body labours for its recovery, nor think it under special obligation to the other members because it has required more exertion than it has returned. A communication of offices between members is not regarded as at all gratuitous, but rather as the payment of that which, being due by the law of nature, it were monstrous to deny. For this reason, he who has performed one kind of duty will not think himself thereby discharged, as is usually the case when a rich man, after contributing somewhat of his substance, delegates remaining burdens to others as if he had nothing to do with them. Everyone should rather consider that, however great he is, he owes himself to his neighbours, and that the only limit to his beneficence is the failure of his means. The extent of these should regulate that of his charity.